Alright, so one thing that I haven't really talked about was this theft of my 7 Series BMW. I know I've mentioned it a few times, but I haven't really gone into the details or talked about any specifics. But here it is, here's a car, and now I have it back. This is a day after that we're looking at here. This is a day after that I got it back, I got picked up, and I'm gonna kind of go backwards. I got this here just recently. The car's been gone for roughly 4 or 5 months. They found it about a month ago. It's been sitting at the tow yard where they picked it up or where they brought it to. And getting the right paperwork and getting the release and then getting Turo to pay for everything was a big hassle. I mean, that literally took about 3 weeks in itself just to get Turo to get their tow person to bring it over to Las Vegas. Oh, I do have to mention that it was stolen here in Vegas, brought to LA, found in LA, picked up in LA, towed, and it sat inside of a tow yard in LA for, I think it was about a month, maybe even a little bit over a month. But just to get Turo to arrange for delivery or pickup and then delivery transfer from the tow yard to here was a hassle. Now I know I could have probably done it myself, but on this transaction here, I was, the communication was real tough. They were backed up. They must have had a bunch of theft. In fact, I know because part of this theft was a whole ring of theft for automotive cars, BMWs to be specific, from Vegas to LA. And so I wasn't really allowed to talk about the specifics of this deal. But getting back this car, you could just look at it and tell they thrashed it, they didn't care about it. I mean, they pulled out all the fuses. The car smelled like weed, smelled like alcohol. They were just partying in this car. Not only did they steal it, again, they did this to multiple cars, multiple Turo cars. They ripped off the dash and the bottom. The steering column didn't work, like the adjustment, so I had to get a bunch of stuff repaired. But I'll talk a little bit more about that. Again, I'm not going to go into any real details about the theft or the whole process, but I'll generally speak and kind of share my experience. And hopefully you'll leave a comment down below, leave a question down below, and we can create a dialogue, and maybe I'll share a little bit more specifics based off of questions that you might have. Maybe you've gone through this situation and you want to share as well too as a host. I will say that this 7 Series BMW, every time it's been stolen, it's been pretty messed up, but this has been the most messed up. I don't know if we can see it here, but there was a little bit of a door ding on the side here. There was some damage to the front right headlight. Well, it just didn't work, so I don't know what they did. And again, they put out they put out a bunch of stuff like fuse boxes, fuses. There was a sensor that they pulled off the battery. There was a steering thing module that they took from under the dash, under the steering column. And the car was ultimately just thrashed and it was driven around. Again, it smelled like cigarettes, it smelled like weed, it smelled like alcohol, and there was just a bunch of mess. Also, what happened too is when they pulled the car wouldn't start, it wouldn't run on its own, so it was a real hassle. So now I'm cleaning it, and good thing I'm wearing gloves because I was picking up some real nasty stuff in the car. And as I show you this and show this process of cleaning it, I'll go into a little bit more about the timeline, right? So it got stolen in December. It got found in January. It got located actually from the private investigators from Turo. And they knew generally what area. They did have a house. They did find it using not the GPS system, because the GPS system for BMW was deactivated, and the GPS secondary system was also disabled. So these were professionals to a certain level as far as the theft. Now, how did they get the car? Well, here's the device right here that they pulled out, and I don't really know what this is. It has something to do with the steering. The steering didn't work, it was busted, it was just laying around there along with some other stuff. And one video that you didn't see is there's a bunch of pictures. But as I'm getting this car just clean enough so I can move it to the car wash and bring it over there so I can give it a real deep clean, again, I'm gonna go back into the timeline. So once they found it in January, they were able to acquire they knew kind of the group or the house and some of the locations that the car was traveling to. This is without the GPS system. I can't really share on how they found out, but I will say this. I've worked with the private investigator in California. Now there's 2 of them. I've worked with 1 of them. And out of the 7 times that I've gone through this for a stolen car or a non-return car with no intention to returning the car, I guess those are considered stolen cars as well too, private investigation team has been, or individual that does work for Turo, he is amazing. And again, I've been working with him for the past 6 years. Early on, my cars got stolen from even the first year that I was doing Turo. And so, it seems like there's a theme for certain cars. I've had multiple Corvettes, so I've gone through the process of pulling the Corvettes. And BMWs, they seem to love BMWs, especially this one here. This is the 3rd time this car has been technically stolen or non-returned with no intention to be returned from a renter on Turo. I will say this, that every single time that a BMW gets stolen, they were on Turo Go and they use a Turo Go application. If you don't know what Turo Go is, it's the ability for them to be able to book the car. It's remoteless, it's contactless. They can access the car. I leave the key inside the car, and very limited communication. In fact, I don't have to check their driver's license. There's no way for me to check their driver's license. I don't, as a host, when it's a Turo Go transaction, I don't get the driver's license information, I don't get the date of birth. There's no verification process. They literally can book my car, and with my cars they can book it, and if it's ready and they're in the area, they can pick it up in 5 minutes. Usually it's 30. So, one thing that I was thinking about as I was cleaning this car is, what is the consistency of, or what has been consistent other than the cars being Turo Go? Well, another consistency that I've noticed with all the theft that has happened while on Turo has been my cars were at a little bit of a more discounted rate, right? It's usually during midweek, and my strategy has been in the past, and it's no longer moving forward, but even up to this year or end of last year, this car, I wanted to really make some money because I was making some good money on the weekend. So midweek, I wanted to have the car ready and available for a last minute booking for someone who wanted to borrow for same day, and I wanted to clear out Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. Now this car specifically was getting a $267 day rate, sometimes even more than that on special weekends or events. And maybe it was greed because I wanted to get even the gaps, the Tuesday to Wednesday gaps, or Wednesday to Thursday gaps, even though I had rentals come in from, like, let's say Thursday to Saturday, and then again Saturday to Monday, or in one situation I had it from Thursday to Monday. I was trying to clear out those gaps, even though that the profit for this car was, close to $3,000. Well, not profit, it was what it brought in was close to $3,000. So I was filling in the gaps, and I found myself doing this quite often. And with this car, dropping this car from $267 down to $150, $160, made it a very enticing car. They got a 7 Series Bmw that they could pick up right away, and it was a nice setup, and they were able to do it remotely. So in this situation, the price was dropped. And going back, remembering the times my other cars went through the same situation, my BMW 6 Series, my X4s, my 2 Series BMW. These BMWs were on Turo Go. My other 2 Series BMW was on Turo Go, and they were stolen at a lower day rate. So if you need more reasons why not to have your car on a lower day rate, this is one of my biggest ones. I haven't had any issues. I've had a lot less issues, and I do believe that someone will probably defer from or skip your listing if the price is a little bit on the higher side, especially if you're over the $200 per day, which $200 per day, usually they'll go for something cheaper. right? More affordable. And for a 7 Series BMW, they'll be able to find a 2018, 2019. This one's a 2018. They'd be able to find a 2018, 2019 for $80, $90. And if it's on Turo Go, $120, $150, then why not pick that one, especially if they can get a newer one. So with this car here at 2018, at a lower day rate, it being a 7 Series BMW, almost a six-figure car, you know, of course, this seems like the type of profile, the type of vehicle that a thief would want to steal. And again, this event was tied to multiple events, and a lot of the cars that were targeted, from what I've heard and what I know, were BMWs here in Las Vegas. And they all went to LA. And I did see a couple of things. I don't know if it was entirely related, but it was on the news about car theft being very high. Now this car was left in the parking garage, so it was real easy. And I left it in a nice 5-star parking lot. I'm not gonna say which casino or which hotel, but it's one of the 5-star ones, one of the nicest ones with a lot of cameras. So I'm surprised that that wasn't part of the reason why the car was found so fast. So another thing too is, you know, these cars are always found. I haven't gone through or heard of a situation where someone got their car stolen and the car wasn't retrieved. Now, I have recently heard about people getting their car stolen and going to Mexico. So that kind of freaks me out a little bit. So they would watch it on their GPS. So if your car is going to be stolen, it's going to be stolen. Even if you have a GPS system, and this is the crazy part, even if you have a GPS system and you can tell the cops where the car is, it's very hard. And I'm going to share another experience that I've had. We did have another car that was stolen, and we had a GPS system. And I was in California at the time, in Orange County. Every time the car moved, even with a GPS system, to another city, we had to contact that city and tell the police of that city where the car is. And these are neighboring cities. So unless you are part of that process, you know, it's almost a hassle to be part of that process, because that's a full-time job in itself. It definitely felt so for those 2 days. Very stressful, contacting support. And, you know, I don't believe that Turo has a team to be able to do that. Maybe they do now. That was quite some time ago. I don't know. But for me, I would advise just to stay away from it. If you have a GPS system, great. The people that I've talked to with GPS system, because the lack of communication, the lack of a protocol or process for that communication between the host, Turo, the investigator, and the police, there's such a disconnect. And I can definitely understand why. I would definitely just trust, if you're on the West Coast here, especially in California and Vegas, that private investigators that Turo uses, they're absolutely amazing. And then one of them I know for sure, the one I've worked with is ex-LAPD, has seen this multiple times and is very efficient, very smart, intelligent, creative, and he knows what he's doing. So one thing you can almost count on is a car being retrieved or found if it didn't go to Mexico or if it didn't hop on a boat. And literally another host shared with me where they were watching their phone and they can see the car GPS tracking it, and it goes into the ocean, obviously on a boat, and then onto an island where it stayed there. And so that took some time. Now let's talk about more into the timeline. So after the car was impounded, was in the impound yard for over a month, finally got it back over here, and because of the situation with parts being hard to order for the car, my car sat for another month and a half in the automotive shop. Of course, part of that was as well as communicating back and forth with Turo for supplements and getting more parts ordered, getting more money from the company, and them coming back and saying, well, here's some other options. And it was a real hassle this time around. So, you know, for me, I wouldn't want to be put in a position to where my car was stolen or in the shop waiting for parts. In the past 2 years, I've noticed that's been an income killer, that's been a business killer, being in the shop, being down for so long. And this car here, I mean, it was about 5-6 months, you know, half a year down. and at the car payment that's at, you know, that's close to $11,000 in lost revenue. I mean, 6 months bringing in $2,000 to $3,000. You know, I mean, we're talking about a lot of money. We're talking about $6,000, $12,000, $19,000. So, you know, this car too, there's certain things that you can't, you know, after I cleaned it up, there's certain things that you can't really charge for. I was only able to acquire like a $200 cleaning fee for this mess here. I was also only able to not retrieve all my losses because, like, tires, I had to replace the tires in the front because they're a little bit more worn, and they're ready to go. Now, I don't know how much they drove. If I remember right, it was like thousands of miles that they drove this car. And so I had to replace the tires, I changed the oil, I also had to do a fuel, I flushed out the fuel system because chances are they're probably not putting 91 premium, right? And how do you prove that? The car was running all right, and you just don't know. So these are a couple of things that you want to make sure that you change. Transmission fluid, I switched that up as well too. You know, I just did as much as I possibly can, like I was gonna sell the car. In fact, that's what I always go at, is when the car's in the shop and it comes out of the shop, I wanna make sure it's like, this is a car that have everything else checked. What else can I do? Let's make sure that the essence of this car being stolen or abused is no longer there, especially the smells. You know, I hit this with vinegar, I hit this with a machine, and I threw the mats, you know, I shampooed the carpet and I threw the mats in the wash twice. I ozoned the car, I think 10 times. I let the windows down. I ran it through the wash probably 5 times, and you know, it's finally, after like a couple weeks of cleaning, it feels back to normal. I feel safe. I feel clean in it again. I don't feel like I'm in a car that was abused in the state that it was when it was returned. The positives. Well, the positives is I got the car back, right? That could be a negative as well too, because if the car was totally lost, then I probably would have been able to I would have been paid out for it and would have got another 7 Series Bmw. Now, how hard is it to get another car? That could have been another question. Another positive is the team over at Turo, the investigators. You know, now that instead of 1, there's 2. There's an actual department that also I communicated with, but because it was during the holidays and then it took so long, I got pushed around. But at least now there's a department for claims and for loss, and so communication was a little bit better than it has been in the past. The situation might not be the normal situation, but it did take a long time. 2, I didn't have to pay for towing. That was all arranged. I didn't have to pay the tow yard. I didn't have to go there to go pick it up. Although if I did do all that and acquire the cost, who knows, maybe I would have got the car back faster, and maybe I could have got reimbursed for that just the same way. And so who knows, in the past I have retrieved the car, pulled the car. In fact, in the past, what I've done is I've worked directly with the investigator, and that's a pro, right? That's a positive on part of the whole experience. And with that, I was able to retrieve the car and pull it right away. And so what I do next time is I would probably connect with the investigator as soon as possible, and look to his guidance and follow his exact instructions, from communication, going to the police department, filing a police report. You know, in this situation, this was my brother's car. He was in Long Beach, I was in Vegas. They wanted a police report over in Vegas. And so, you know, that delayed 2-3 days because, well, there's just that delay. Now, I will say I don't think that was any kind of help as far as them pursuing or looking for the car, especially that it was in LA. And so I think it did help. A pro or positive to the whole situation is the investigator was an ex-LAPD, so had contacts in that department. So I'd feel a lot more safer if a car got stolen in Los Angeles and stayed in Los Angeles, or in, you know, Southern California. If a car got stolen here in Vegas, I don't know how that situation would have worked out. But the negatives or the cons to this, the downtime. This is a high valued car. It was making money, and I didn't have that money. on the up of $20,000 when I lost in this situation, even though this car made $20,000 prior or the year before and was doing really well. There goes all my income because of this issue. Using Turo Go, there's a positive and a negative to it. The negative part is that someone will be able to steal your car. Probably the easiest process for stealing a car is through Turo Go, and hopefully there's a positive. Hopefully that gets better. Hopefully that process. Hopefully they're learning, because Turo doesn't want to have a car stolen either. I'm pretty sure they don't want to go through this whole process, especially with this car. So another thing too about this car is when a car is off the platform, when you don't make it unavailable. For example, you go on a vacation and you snooze your vehicle, or you take it off the platform, or you pause your listing. All these will affect your ranking, and that's what I've seen with this car. From when it was delisted from Turo while it was stolen and gone to the time that I got it back on, which was probably almost 6 months, the car is not ranking as high as it used to. This car ranked high on Google. People found it, and it was very popular, and it was one of my best performing cars. Now it's my worst performing car, and who knows? I think a big part of it is because it was stolen and off the platform and unlisted for quite some time. So that's a big negative, because now I'm trying to ramp this car up, and it's almost like starting over, almost worse than starting over. So I am selling this car. It is a 2018. I am selling my 2018. All my 2018s I am trying to look at picking up new cars. 7 Series Bmw. I probably wouldn't get another one, although I love them. They provide a great experience. But I probably wouldn't get a car like this, because it's a car that's on the list. I'm guessing BMWs, S550s, any cars like this. But I do believe that you can deter theft or being open to theft is if the car's not visible to the thieves. And I do believe that these thieves are probably looking at price points at $50 to $120, $150. As long as I can keep my prices up above $200, which is another great reason why to keep your prices up above $200. Why? Because you get better clients, better experience, and no theft. So if you're on Turo Go, definitely be thinking about that. I don't really vet. It's hard to vet your customers, but I will say that in the past 7 years, I have grown to look at communications, and if they're not communicating well with me, that is one reason why I will not rent to a certain client or renter if their communication is bad. But yeah, let's hopefully that this car doesn't get stolen the fourth time, and if it does, hopefully it ends up in Mexico on an island somewhere. Well, until the next video, thanks for watching this one.